G'day subscribers, today we're going to Jive talk about Phil's Imposter FX Ute. You're with Jules Knight on Jive Talk and Garage. Now, a couple of weeks ago, one of our members reached out to me and said, can you come and have a look at a FX Ute? We live locally to where you are, not far away, and we'd like you to come and give us a bit of an opinion on where we should start on this restoration. So I said, sure. So I went over and had a look at it, walked in, it's in the garage, and it's an FX Ute. They've done some customizing on the firewall, like it's been filled and there's no battery carrier there and all those sorts of things. But the guards are all attached, FX guards, FX bonnet, nice FX grill with no rust in it. Let's see, it had FJ overriders. So my immediate thought was, oh, this could be an air ride, you never know. But so then I went looking for the tag on the right hand front driver's side cross member. No, it wasn't there. And the all of the tags had been filled on the firewall, so there was nothing there. And I looked on the A pillar in case there was a ID plate that was fastened to the A pillar. That wasn't there either. But he did have a loose ID plate, which is great. So as I do with all inquiries, I get the details of their ID plate and if they've got them, the little welded strip to the driver's side apron panel, and I send it to Gary in Bendigo, and Gary's very comprehensive in putting out a report and keeping details of FJs, and he's very, very good with all that sort of thing. So the crux of the matter is, Gary came back and said, oh, look, that car was advertised, let's see, 10 years ago, and it's an Army Ute. Well, I don't hold myself out to be an expert in FX. I'm as good as the next FJ guy with FXs. I've seen Army Utes since 1982, and my friends have got some. So, you know, I know an Army Ute when I see one, and I know it from a distance as well. And this was not an Army Ute. So that's your first red flag. And then I thought, oh, this is a bit of a conundrum. So it was telling me the ID plate did not match that particular vehicle. So I thought, well, there's even more. The plot thickens. Let's say the plot thickens. Anyway, Gary talked about a couple of things. And then I thought, hang on a minute. My own FJ was B for Brisbane 4403. This is my Ute. B 4403, so it was 4,403 as far as production was concerned, .4 in 1954. And I know it was sold on the 29th of April 1954. Now, it had so it was an early FJ, but it was built on an early body, like for instance an FX body. So the two things that straight away it had were the strips down the A pillar that held in place the door rubbers. So that's the vertical strips that come down from the windscreen. So the windscreen, where the windscreen is, that pillar there, that's called an A pillar. The pillar behind you is called a B pillar, irrespective of whether it's a sedan or a ute or a van. That's the B pillar. So on the A pillar, my ute had the strips that were holding in place the door rubbers. And that was the same on a normal 48215, be it sedan or ute. But it also had on the left-hand side, on the passenger side, where the filler configuration, there's a little shield over that for an FJ. Okay, so that's fine. But with an FX, directly opposite to that, there is a pressed reflective panel, and what they do is they actually, for that triangular panel, it has circular corners on it, and they actually screw that to the inside cargo area. So that's how my very early FJ was. So I said to Gary, hang on a minute. Given there was a bit of a conundrum on what was this car. So what I did was I had a look at the A-pillars, and this FX A-pillars weren't FX, they were FJ. And then I looked in the back for that FX panel that gets screwed on in the cargo area on the opposite side of where the fuel filler configuration is, on the inside of the cargo area, so on the driver's side, and it was just a pressed panel. There was no screw-on panel there like there would be on an FX. Because I know that you can have an FJ on an FX body, let's call it an FX body, FX ute body, and probably the same for sedans as well. But you can't have the other way around. You can't have an FX on an FJ body. And the simple reason for that is they have so much production and so many as spare parts that they use them all up. And once they're used up, well, then they put the new stuff on. So in this situation, I then had to say to them, I hate to tell you this, but I think this is an FJ, not an FX. And they said, oh, that's fine. We wanted an FJ anyway. But anyway, let's show you what I'm talking about with the FJ A-pillar on my car. So this is the A-pillar on my FJ. So this is a 1956 FJ. And as you can see, the door rubber here goes into a pressed panel all the way down to the bottom. So down the bottom is the same as what's visible and obvious at the top. So that's on my 1956. So this is the standard FJ type body. Whereas with my 1954 ute, it was built on the 48215, the FX platform. So it has this as a screw-on trim with a screw here and another screw here and another screw there. So, you know, this is the FJ platform, and my ute was on the FX platform, which when I was looking at the Imposter, it was the same as my FJ. So you can have an FJ on an FX platform, but you can't have an FX on an FJ platform. Now, the other thing with this FX and these folks, they're saying, oh, well, we'll just get an FJ grill for it. So, well, hang on a minute. The grill obviously is different. The bonnet, the guards, the frog mouth panel behind the grill, they're all different, as is the upper baffle panel. And the driver's side apron panel in the engine bay is different as well. So let's talk about the guards and the bonnet for a moment. Now, with the guards for an FX, they have a little basically lip that comes up the guards to the bonnet, and then it follows over the bonnet to where it has the Holden lettering on the bonnet. So that's fine. Whereas an FJ only has that lip on top of the main bonnet bar, not the grill, but the bonnet bar. So the guards and the bonnet are different. as are the frog mouth grill and the that part of the apron panel, and probably the stone guard as well. Now, in this instance, the apron panel that had been put on it had a little bracket, and that comes up on the driver's side that the bonnet cable goes through. And we'll just show you that right now. Here's a little picture of the bonnet cable on an FX, which an FJ doesn't have. And here's a little compilation of some of the differences at the front with the 48215 and the FJ for the guards, the bonnet, and the front panelling that I was just. Now, there's going to be heaps of little differences in the cars, and I'm not going to, in the time that we've got, bore you to tears with all of the differences. But let's just say, even with the manifolds, manifold on an FX has got a little heat shield at the front. I don't know why, but they put it on there. For an FJ, they didn't. So I'll show you that now. So if we have a look at this FX motor, so this is an early engine number motor. So you can see this heat shield that's on here. That's predominantly FX. You know, everything's working there, that's fine, but you don't see that on an FJ. So heat shield, FX. So this is my Victoria Police motor, and you'll see where that heat shield was on the FX motor, they actually don't have it on the FJ. Well, on my FJ anyway. I've not had that heat shield on any of the 8 FJ Holdens that I've had. Now, with the FXs and the FJs, the fuel line going into the carburetor, you'll see it at a 90-degree angle. However, as they got closer and closer to the FE production, and even with utes and panel vans that were also made alongside FE production, well, their incoming fuel line into the carburetor sort of came along parallel with the tappet cover, and then had a round curve in it, and that went at 180 degrees into the carburetor. Now, if you see a car like that, that doesn't mean it's wrong, because it's not. It was actually they had FJs that were built like that. My FJ was built like that. My mate's FJ was built like that. And we changed his because the judges were saying, oh, it's a shame that that's not all FJ. What they're not realising is his was in the last under 20 FJ Holden panel FJs made. And so at that time, they've used up all the stock of the FJ components for the grey motor. They're now using FE components, and they're putting on whatever they've got in front of them because it's the new and improved version of whatever there is, and that's all there is to it. And at the same token, they've also then moved to those last FJs, they've moved from a cotton wiring harness to a plastic wiring harness. So going from 6 volts to 12 volts, they did not have to transmit as much power, because you actually need half the gauge, because you've got twice the voltage going from 6 volt to 12 volt. But in doing so, the plastic wiring is a lot more reliable than cloth wiring that rats, mice, moths, whatever can have a nibble at, and before you know it, you've got a fire under the bonnet. So from that perspective, you know, the later model plastic wiring harnesses are actually a real thing. You know, they've got the natural with a trace of color on them and all those types of stuff that match the wiring diagram in the workshop body, but they work really, really well. So this is by no means a comprehensive list of what is you know, the differences. There's huge differences. There's the grille. The FJ is supposed to be a more glamorous and luxurious update. You know, it was Holden's right from the very start of having a Series 1 and Series 2 of the model, the 48-215 being Series 1 and the FJ being Series 2. The same for the FE and the FC, Series 1, Series 2, FBEK. And in doing that, they also shared, you know, some components, like the boot for an FE fits an FB and EK as well. And you'll see that the back half of a ute for an FE, you know, goes all the way through to EK, and the same with an EJ ute. Well, you know, EJ ute is shared with an EH ute. I think the EH on the back looks much nicer, but that's just my personal opinion. But look, that just gives you a little and quick hit of some of the obvious things that can be pointed out. And, you know, I've used some pictures of, you know, straight off the internet from Street Machine to show you some differences there, and also some of the technical detail from the AHF and their newsletters from the previous nationals at Murray Bridge. So there's a few little things there. So we've talked about some of the differences between an FX and an FJ, and an imposter of an FX that I actually came across. So that just gives you a bit of an idea of some of the things to be mindful of when you're going to look at a car to buy, or you've bought a car, or you're just having a look. Might be show and shine, it might be something to buy, or whatever is the case. But it just gives folks a little bit more information and for you to be able to do something with it. But yeah, don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. But more importantly, enjoy your Holden.